Officer, come on! I'm a heart surgeon. There's a code blue inside. Get your black ass on the ground now! Sergeant Brian Keller doesn't bother with the ID card. He doesn't look at the scrubs, the hospital logo, the stethoscope. He sees dark skin and nothing else. You a surgeon? He snorts. Man, surgeons ain't black. Drop to your knees. That's where your kind fits. The cuffs bite down. Metal wins. Inside, a heart flatlines. The zip of steel locking shut echoes in the bay. A white woman nearby lifts her phone, recording, laughing under her breath. A man in a tailored suit glances over, shrugs, keeps walking. Two medical students at the sliding doors freeze, badge lanyards in hand, terror in their eyes. Nobody steps in. Nobody challenges Keller. Inside, a woman's heart has stopped. She belongs to someone powerful, someone who signs Keller's paycheck. In 11 minutes, he'll beg those same black hands he's shackling. Tuesday, 6:30 a.m., the Hale kitchen smells like burnt toast, trying to pass as breakfast, and decent coffee, trying to hide cheap beans. Dr. Marcus Hale stands over the stove, flipping pancakes in a skillet that has seen better days. His daughter, Lila, perches at the counter, algebra book open, pencil tapping a nervous rhythm. She's 15, early in high school, stuck in the kind of year that feels like a punishment that might last forever. Dad, you're still coming to career day, right? She asks, not looking up. Marcus slides a pancake onto her plate, light brown just the way she likes, then another on top. Thursday, 2 o'clock. I'll be there, he says. Promise. Promise, promise? He forces a grin. Promise, promise. She smiles, and it's the same crooked smile her mother had. For 8 years since cancer took Renee and left him raising Lila alone, that resemblance has been both a blanket and a blade. The kitchen is cramped, cabinets dated, but there's warmth in the clutter. Morning sun pushes through the window above the sink, stretching bright rectangles across the scuffed tile. Next to the fridge hangs a framed photo at eye level. Two men in surgical caps and masks pulled down, arms hooked around each other's shoulders. One is Marcus, 10 years younger, face unlined, eyes bright, still convinced skill and hard work are all a man needs. The other is older, with graying curls and a gentle smile. Dr. Leonard Price. The caption under the photo reads in careful handwriting, "Hands steady, heart steady, LP." Marcus pauses there like he does most mornings. A ritual, half prayer, half punishment. A conversation with a man who can't answer back. I still talk to him, you know, he tells Lila. The doctor who trained you, she says. The one who did my surgery when I was a baby. Leonard Price has been dead for 10 years. The report said traffic accident, slip and fall, head trauma, case closed. Marcus never bought that story. But suspicion without proof is just grief in a different outfit. And grief, he's learned, doesn't survive cross-examination. He drops Lila at school a little before 7, watches her disappear through the glass doors, backpack bouncing, then makes the 12-minute drive to St. Clement Regional Medical Center. The hospital sits on a hill, surveying downtown Meredith like a concrete castle. 180,000 people live in the county. Only a fraction will ever need a heart surgeon. The ones who do usually ask for Marcus Hale. He badges through the staff entrance at 7:15. Fluorescent lights hum overhead, relentless, turning everyone the same shade of tired. The hallway smells like antiseptic, floor polish, and faint bacon from the cafeteria. Somewhere, an overhead speaker calls a name he doesn't recognize. Near the elevators, Nurse Denise Harmon, everyone just says D, strides toward him, chart in hand. She's 50, 22 years in cardiac, and has suffered enough egos to know which surgeons actually deserve the title. "Morning, Dr. Hale," she says. "Morning, D." She stops, gives him her signature squint, the one she reserves for doctors she'd trust, with her own chest cracked open. "You know what I tell everybody? If I ever land on that table, I want your hands. Nobody else touching my heart." He nods once. Compliments never sit comfortably. "Appreciate it," he says, and keeps walking. At his locker, he changes into fresh blue scrubs, clips on his ID, glances at the photograph on the badge. The picture is a decade old, taken the year Leonard died. He's never updated it. A younger Hale stares back. Fewer lines, softer jaw, eyes that hadn't yet learned how much a system can take from a man who insists on asking questions. He checks his slate for the day. Triple bypass at 9, valve replacement at 1, consult at 4. Nothing urgent, nothing crashing. A Tuesday like any other. Outside in the parking lot, a police cruiser idles by the emergency entrance. Sergeant Brian Keller sits behind the wheel, radio pressed against his shoulder. He listens, jaw tight, then nods, though no one can see him. "Copy that," he says. The voice on the line belongs to his boss, Police Chief Martin Doyle. The instruction is simple enough to memorize in a single breath. Hang around the hospital, control the flow, slow certain people down. Keller doesn't ask what certain people means. He never does. That unquestioning habit is precisely what makes him valuable. At 2:28 p.m., the intercom inside St. Clement crackles to life. "Code Blue, cardiac arrest, emergency department. Patient, Rebecca Doyle." The announcement ricochets through the corridors. Marcus hears it from the third-floor surgical prep area. He doesn't know the name, only the math. Code Blue, no pulse, cardiac arrest, every second counts. For each minute without intervention, survival drops roughly 10%. He's the closest cardiothoracic surgeon. He moves before the sentence finishes, echoing down the hall. The elevator will cost him 90 seconds. Stairs, maybe 70. But there's a faster path. Out the side exit, across the lot, in through the ambulance bay. He can save 40 seconds that way, maybe more. In cardiac work, 40 seconds is the distance between a patient who walks out, cracking jokes at follow-up, and one whose family plans a funeral. Marcus pushes through the door, jogs into raw March air, stethoscope bouncing against his chest with every stride, shoes slapping asphalt. The automatic doors whisper shut behind him. Wind hits his face, cool and sharp, cutting through the lingering smell of disinfectant on his scrubs. He's halfway across the lot when a voice knifes through the air. "Sir, stop right there!" Two officers stand by the cruiser. The younger one, Officer Jason Rudd, looks barely 30, hand hovering uncertainly near his belt. The older one is Keller, 43 years on this earth, 17 in uniform, 7 complaints buried in his file, eyes trained to see danger where he wants. Marcus doesn't stop. He slows just enough to hold up his badge. "I'm a surgeon. My patient is coding inside. Move, please." Keller steps into his path, palm resting near his holster. Not on it, but close enough to send a message. "ID," he says. Marcus hands over his badge. Keller squints at it, then at Marcus. The photo is 10 years and a lifetime of stress ago. More gray now, more hollows beneath the cheekbones. "Doesn't really look like you," Keller mutters. "It's me," Marcus answers, keeping his voice calm. "Call the ER. Any nurse on cardiac will confirm. I have to go now." Keller doesn't budge. His eyes drag over the scrubs, the hospital logo, the ID, the stethoscope, then slide back to skin color. All the proof in the world sits in front of him, and none of it matters. "You're not going anywhere until I verify this," he says. Marcus swallows frustration. 15 years in an OR taught him that panic kills faster than any scalpel. "A woman is dying in there," he says, forcing each word steady. "Every second you hold me here—" "Hands behind your back," Keller interrupts. The cuffs click closed. Cold metal on warm skin, the same hands that have cradled beating hearts now yanked behind him like he's a threat instead of the help. The world narrows. The automatic doors slide open, and Nurse Denise steps out, eyes widening. "That's Dr. Hale," she snaps. "What the hell are you doing?" "He's our cardiothoracic surgeon." Keller doesn't look at her. "Ma'am, step back. Police business." "There's a woman crashing in there." Denise fires back, voice shaking with fury. "He's the one who can save her. Step back." 4 minutes bleed away. 4 minutes of Keller murmuring into his radio, chasing verification. 4 minutes of Marcus standing cuffed while someone else tries to keep Rebecca's heart beating. 4 minutes of Denise pleading with officers who treat her like static. Finally, Keller gets the confirmation he demanded. He unlocks the cuffs with a casual clack. No apology, no acknowledgement. "You can go," he says. Marcus doesn't answer. He bolts through the doors, sprints down the corridor, storms into the emergency department. The wall clock reads 2:43 p.m., 11 minutes since the code was called. In Trauma 1, a backup surgeon pounds compressions into the chest of a silver-haired woman. Rebecca Doyle, 57, no previous cardiac history. Her body moves with the rhythm, but the monitor above her shows electrical chaos. Marcus moves in without ceremony. "I've got it," he says, taking over. He calls for the crash cart, for meds, for instruments. When those fail, he opens her chest, fingers sinking past bone and tissue, wrapping around the silent muscle inside. At 2:46, the monitor goes flat. 52 endless seconds of nothing, no rhythm, no electricity, just a straight green line and a terrible electronic whine. Marcus massages her heart directly, squeezes, releases, again and again, counting silently with every compression. 15 years of practice turn his hands into metronomes. At 2:48, a blip appears, then another. A stuttering rhythm becomes something usable. By 3:02, Rebecca Doyle is technically stable, alive but changed. The delay has carved its mark. 52 seconds without oxygen. 11 minutes lost to a parking lot argument. Her left ventricle now bears permanent injury. The attending reads the preliminary report aloud. Roughly 30% reduction in function, pacemaker required. Marcus stands there, gloves bloody, heart steady, jaw clenched. Rebecca's eyelids flutter. She doesn't know Marcus. She doesn't know what he did for her, or what someone did to stop him from doing it sooner. Outside, in the parking lot, a bystander rewinds a shaky video on his phone. 2 minutes and 52 seconds of footage. A black surgeon in scrubs, handcuffed, a white officer dismissing his badge, a hospital looming behind them as sirens scream. By 7:00 p.m., that video will pass 1.5 million views. By day 4, Marcus Hale will be the one in jail. The clip travels faster than gossip in a small town after Sunday service. By 9:00 p.m. Tuesday, it's hit every major news station in the state. By midnight, cable networks spin it on a loop. Scrubs, cuffs, pleading, indifference, emergency doors. Bright text under the image screams, "Black heart surgeon detained while patient flatlines." Comment sections explode into digital battlegrounds. Some voices defend the officers. He should have just obeyed. Most do not. This is murder by red tape, one comment reads, liked into prominence. Within 24 hours, the view count passes 1.5 million. A hashtag takes over the feed. Say justice for Hale. Protesters gather outside the Meredith County Police Department, waving signs with Marcus's face, chanting for Keller's badge and the chief's resignation. 48 hours later, the video hits 3.8 million views. National anchors dissect every frame. Legal analysts debate procedure and liability. Everyone is sure they understand. Everyone has a take. The only person who refuses to watch is Marcus himself. He can't stomach seeing those 4 minutes from the outside, watching himself frozen behind steel while Rebecca's heart stutters toward silence. He doesn't read comments. He doesn't check trending topics. He sits in his living room staring at Leonard Price's photograph on the wall. Lila curls beside him on the couch, phone in hand. She's already seen the footage. Classmates sent it, some with sympathy, some with cruelty, some with thoughtless curiosity. "Dad," she whispers, voice small, "what's going to happen to you?" Marcus has spent his life giving answers. This time, he has none. On day 3, pressure hits a boiling point. The mayor calls for a thorough, transparent investigation. St. Clement's administration places Marcus on leave. Standard procedure, the email says, pending internal review. The sentence is clean, lawyered, bloodless. The implication is not. He's a liability now, a PR problem in Scrubs. No one from leadership calls. He finds out about his suspension from an unsigned 3-line message that lands in his inbox at 6:12 a.m. On day 4, the narrative lurches sideways. District Attorney Robert Laird steps up to a podium on the courthouse steps. He's 58, silver hair, expensive suit, eyes that instinctively find the nearest camera. 12 years in office, undefeated at the ballot box. He knows how to shape a story. Right now, the crowd wants vengeance dressed as accountability. His tone is grave. Mrs. Rebecca Doyle survived her cardiac crisis, thankfully, but not without lasting harm, he begins, letting the microphones soak in every syllable. She has sustained permanent damage to her heart, he continues. She will need a pacemaker for the rest of her life. She will never again fully enjoy the activities she once loved. He pauses, face arranged in solemn concern. Our investigation concludes that Dr. Marcus Hale's resistance during contact with officers contributed to an 11-minute delay in her treatment. That delay caused irreversible injury. Another measured pause. Cameras zoom closer. Therefore, this office is charging Dr. Hale with second-degree reckless endangerment. The country splits along familiar fracture lines. Half see a black doctor punished for the violence done to him, a man blamed for the harm caused by others. The other half sees a supposed professional who should have shut up and complied, who should have trusted officers, who should have remembered his place. The arrest itself happens at St. Clement. 2 deputies walk through the main entrance at 9:12 a.m., uniforms crisp. They find Marcus in the physician's lounge, still in scrubs, still waiting for someone to tell him his career isn't over. They cuff him for the second time in 4 days. This time, the cameras are ready. This time, colleagues stand beyond the lounge glass. Nurses who've watched him rebuild failing hearts. Doctors who've leaned on his skills. Administrators who signed his suspension notice. Dee stands in the front, hand pressed over her mouth, tears streaking her cheeks. The charge carries 2 to 5 years in state prison. A conviction means losing his license, his livelihood, everything. Leonard once handed him with a quiet, hand steady, heart steady. Bail is set at $250,000. Marcus posts it by mortgaging the only thing he has of real value, the house. The small, worn place where Lila took her first steps, where Renee drew her last breath, where Leonard's photo guards the kitchen wall. It was supposed to be paid off by now, their safety net. Instead, it becomes collateral. Lila watches the news from her room, sees her father marched away in cuffs. The comments call him thug, fraud, criminal. She shuts her laptop with a quiet click. She's 15 and already learning that tears don't sway judges or juries. Across town, in a cramped office at the Meredith Tribune, reporter Jenna Ruiz watches the same footage on a desktop monitor with a cracked corner. She's 37, a journalist known for digging into stories everyone else avoids. 2 regional awards sit dusty on her shelf. So do folders full of threats from powerful people who'd prefer she'd stop. Something in this case smells wrong. The district attorney moved too fast. The charges landed too neatly. Someone is pushing hard behind the scenes. Someone with influence and nerves of steel. Someone who needs Dr. Hale to carry this blame. Jenna pulls up personnel records for the Meredith County Police Department. She starts with Sergeant Brian Keller. 12 years on the job, a spotless public record. But public records are curated narratives. They leave the ugly parts outside the frame. Jenna has built a career on finding what gets left out. She keeps digging. Complaint histories, old news clippings, forgotten reports. Patterns begin to shimmer faintly beneath the surface. What she uncovers will upend the story everyone thinks they know. But first, the chief of police gets his chance to perform. Day 5. Chief Martin Doyle faces a thicket of microphones outside St. Clement's front entrance. He's 60 now, shoulders broad under a perfectly pressed uniform, silver hair groomed, badge shining in the morning light. He looks like the very picture of steady authority. Behind him, an enlarged photograph of Rebecca rests on an easel. She's mid-laugh in the image, caught in some long-ago moment before her heart betrayed her in the ER, before wires and a pacemaker became part of her silhouette. She looks joyful, though photos lie all the time. Doyle starts slowly, voice thick with carefully practiced sorrow. "My wife is alive," he says, "but she will never be the same." He waits, let silence do the first half of the work. Rebecca will rely on a pacemaker for the rest of her life, he continues. She will never drive again. She will never jog our neighborhood like she used to, never dance freely at our daughter's wedding, never chase future grandkids through the backyard like she dreamed. Another pause, a breath just shaky enough to read on camera. Dr. Hale had a choice: cooperate for 30 seconds or fight. He chose to fight, and because of that, my wife lost 30% of her heart forever. "I'm not interested in revenge," Doyle says, eyes shining on cue. "I'm asking for accountability, for justice for my wife." Reporters shout questions. He ignores them, stepping away from the microphones, leaving Rebecca's smiling photo as a silent witness behind him. He climbs into a waiting SUV, door closing with soft finality. Upstairs, 3 floors above his press conference, Rebecca herself lies in a private recovery room, monitors blinking quietly. She's been awake for 2 days. She's watched her husband's performance on television. She's heard him sling her pain across the airwaves like a weapon, her suffering packaged as political capital. She hasn't told him how that feels. She barely talks at all. A nurse notes in her chart, patient withdrawn, minimal eye contact with spouse, flat effect, likely depressive symptoms, post-event. Psychiatric consult recommended. When Martin visits, he takes her hand gently, voice laced with reassurance. He tells her everything is under control. Tells her not to worry about lawyers, reporters, or court dates. He promises the bills are handled, the media is handled, the whole situation is handled. Rebecca studies his face as he speaks. 2 decades married have taught her which expressions are real and which are costumes. The one he's wearing now belongs firmly in the latter category. She says almost nothing. Meanwhile, the next wave of bills begins its march to their mailbox. The pacemaker implantation is scheduled for the following week. Estimated cost, $85,000. Insurance will blunt most of the financial blow. But what Rebecca is paying isn't really measured in dollars. She'll share space with a machine inside her chest for the rest of her life. A device that will beat when her heart refuses, a constant reminder of 11 stolen minutes. Across town, Jenna Ruiz squints at microfilm in the Tribune archives, eyes burning. She's been digging through old papers from 2016 for 3 straight hours. Her back aches. Her coffee turned cold an hour ago. She's about to quit when a headline snags her. A small piece buried on page 12 of the March 18th edition. Local surgeon dies in traffic incident. The byline is someone who's since retired. The name of the deceased, Dr. Leonard Price. Cause of death, blunt force trauma to the skull. Official ruling, accidental fall during a routine traffic stop. Officer involved, Sergeant Brian Keller. Commanding officer, who approved the file closure, Captain Martin Doyle. Jenna leans back, heart thudding. Same officer, same supervisor, same silence, different surgeon, 8 years earlier. She reaches for her phone. Lieutenant Harold Finch has spent 18 years in internal affairs. He's 54, 6 months from retirement, with a lake cabin he hardly visits and a wife who has spent 30 years reminding him there's more to life than reports. He's seen enough dirty laundry to fill a library. He's also watched countless cover-ups succeed. The system shields its own. It always has, probably always will. But the years have worn down his tolerance for looking the other way. He's tired of watching bullies keep their badges while decent officers burn out and disappear. Tired of signing off on investigations whose outcomes were scripted before the first witness interview. He wants to end his career with something that actually matters. When Jenna calls, he doesn't hang up. They meet at a Greasy Spoon diner a few miles past the county line. Neutral ground. The booths are cracked vinyl, the coffee scorched, the pie older than some of the regulars. But nobody from Meredith PD eats here. Finch orders black coffee anyway. Jenna orders nothing. Her nerves already vibrate from caffeine. "Tell me about the Price case," she says, flipping open a notebook. Finch stirs his coffee slowly, listening to the spoon clink against porcelain. "What do you want to know?" he asks. "Everything," she answers. He sets the spoon down, fingers lingering on the handle, eyes tired. "Leonard Price was a cardiothoracic surgeon at St. Clement," he begins. "Good man, stellar record, 50 years old, married, no kids. Spent his weekends at a free clinic on the South End," Finch adds. "The kind of doctor who actually chose medicine to help people, not for the golf club membership." Jenna scribbles. "What happened?" March 2016. He's driving home from a late shift. Keller pulls him over for a busted taillight. Supposed to be routine. Finch takes a sip of coffee, winces at the taste. According to the official narrative, Price got agitated. Keller tried to restrain him. Price fell, cracked his skull on the pavement, died right there. Open and shut tragedy, Finch says. No charges. Internal review stamped it accidental. But you didn't buy it, Jenna says. I led the investigation, he replies. Interviewed everyone, gathered evidence, wrote the report. He pauses, jaw tightening. The report that never saw daylight. What did you actually find? There was a witness, Finch says. Woman parked across the street. Name was Lillian Carter. She swore Keller struck Price. Couldn't see exactly with what. Maybe a flashlight, maybe a baton. But she heard the hit, said it sounded like smashing a melon. Jenna's pen halts mid-word. Where's that statement now? Erased, Finch answers. 2 days later, she revised her account. Suddenly, she didn't see anything. Claims she'd been drinking. Memory fuzzy. And you believe that? Jenna asks. Finch lets out a humorless laugh. Lillian Carter was 59, a church deacon, 30 years sober by every record I checked. She didn't change her story because she got confused. She changed it because someone convinced her that keeping quiet was best for everyone, especially her. Who closed the file? Jenna presses. Finch meets her eyes. Captain Martin Doyle, he says. He signed off personally. 2 months later, he's promoted to chief. The connection sharpens like a camera coming into focus. Same officer on the street, same supervisor upstairs, 2 doctors intersecting with the same blue wall. I need that file, Jenna says. Finch shakes his head immediately. It's sealed. Internal affairs records are guarded like the crown jewels. If I leak it and it traces back to me, I lose my pension, my badge, everything. If you don't, Jenna says quietly, then one surgeon stays dead on a lie and another goes to prison for trying to save a life. Finch looks down at his hands, then at the thin ring on his finger, then at coffee gone cold. The lines on his face are a map of compromises made in the name of survival. He has 6 months to coast out and disappear to that cabin. Instead, he feels something shift heavily inside his chest. An old moral reflex, waking up, refusing to stay buried. He remembers Leonard's widow sitting across from him 8 years ago, gripping a tissue with white-knuckled hands, asking, "So that's it?" He remembers signing the line that made "That's it" official. He remembers Brian Keller's blank stare, Martin Doyle's polite pressure, the way everyone seemed relieved when the case closed quietly. Across from him now, Jenna waits, pen poised, offering no promises except the possibility of truth. Finch exhales slowly. I can't just hand you the file, he says, but maybe there's another way. Jenna leans forward. What kind of way? The kind where I don't technically break a law, Finch replies, and you just happen to be very good at finding things people accidentally leave lying around. He glances toward the diner window, half expecting to see a squad car lurking. All he sees is empty parking lot and a flickering streetlight. If I do this, he adds, there's no going back. Not for me, not for Hale, not for Doyle. You understand that? Jenna nods once. I understood that when I called you. Finch absorbs her answer in silence. His mind flips through years of training, policies, and quiet warnings from older cops who told him to keep his head down. He thinks about the oath he took, the one that mentioned justice long before it mentioned loyalty. Outside, clouds roll over the afternoon sun, dimming the light through the greasy window. All right, he says finally, I'll show you where to look. But after that, you're on your own. Jenna closes her notebook, heart pounding. That's all I need. Back in Meredith, the town simmers. Protest lines have grown longer, chants louder. Talk radio rants. Cable panels argue over split screens. Marcus remains at home on bond, visiting his attorney, replaying Keller's voice in his head every night. Lila moves around him quietly, pretending not to read the headlines. St. Clement runs on without him, surgeons rotating through ORs. Some whisper his name. Others refuse, already rewriting their memories to protect their jobs. The institution adjusts, like a body compensating for an injured limb. Meanwhile, Rebecca lies awake in her hospital bed, the beeping monitor syncing with the strange new rhythm inside her chest. She stares at the ceiling and counts the seconds between pulses, wondering about all the seconds she lost. She thinks about Marcus's face, she remembers it faintly now, and about the rough hands that delayed him. She wonders what conversations are happening about her without her. She wonders if she'll ever feel like her body truly belongs to her again, instead of to doctors, cops, or cameras. News producers keep replaying her smiling photo beside Marcus's mugshot, arranging them like opposing chess pieces. Pundits dissect her medical chart as if they're reading tea leaves. Strangers online debate how much pain in her chest is acceptable collateral damage. No one asks Rebecca what she wants justice to look like. No one asks if she believes the story her husband is selling. She keeps her doubts locked behind her teeth, saving what little energy she has for the simple work of breathing. At the Tribune, Jenna and her editor argue over space, deadlines, and how much risk the paper can tolerate. "If you're wrong, we're finished," he warns. "If I'm right and we stay quiet, we're useless," she fires back. In the end, he gives her cautious approval and a thin budget. Finch follows through on his side of the bargain, forgetting a box in a conference room. Jenna spends a long night with photocopiers and highlighters, piecing together a story that was never meant to be told. Internal affairs memos, redacted interviews, timestamps that don't quite line up. Every page tells a different version of the same lie. Keller's narrative shifts subtly from draft to draft. Doyle's handwritten notes appear in margins. Limit exposure. No further action. Media sensitive. Lillian Carter's original statement sits paperclip to her retraction, the contrast almost obscene. Jenna feels anger coiling tighter with each document she reads. This isn't just one bad night or one rogue cop. It's a pattern of protection built carefully over years. She drafts her story in short, sharp paragraphs, each one anchored by a document, a quote, a date. No speculation, only what she can prove. She lays Leonard Price beside Marcus Hale, line by line, showing how they intersect with Keller and Doyle. She writes about the witness who changed her story, the chief who climbed the ladder, the surgeon whose questions made him inconvenient. As dawn creeps through the newsroom windows, she types her closing sentence and knows there's no taking any of it back now. Across town, Marcus meets with his defense attorney, a tired man with too many files and not enough hours. Public opinion is a storm, the lawyer says, but courts care about evidence. Marcus thinks of Jenna's name. He's heard it mentioned once, but doesn't yet know she's hunting ghosts tied to his mentor's death. He only knows his mortgage is gone, his job is frozen, his daughter is scared, and he's being blamed for an 11-minute delay that started with a gun belt and a closed mind. He remembers Leonard's voice from years ago, calm over the clatter of an OR. They'll let you cut open chests, Marcus, Leonard had warned. But don't you ever forget, some folks will only ever see you as a black man with a blade. Back then, Marcus had laughed it off. He doesn't laugh now. His world has narrowed to depositions, court dates, and the sick twist in his stomach whenever Lila flinches at a siren outside. He wonders how you rebuild trust in a system determined to break you. Lila, for her part, has become an expert at pretending. At school, she rolls her eyes when classmates whisper, "That's the doctor's kid," as if she's overheard it too many times to care. At home, she cracks jokes and changes channels before news segments about her father can play. Late at night, when the house is quiet, she scrolls through old photos, birthday cakes, hospital visits to see Renee, goofy selfies with Marcus, and tries to remember what it felt like when her family wasn't a headline. She believes her dad when he says he did everything right. She doesn't know what to do with the fact that doing everything right still got him here. Her friends tell her the protests are epic, like this is some movie. For Lila, it's just life suspended. She hears his trial date whispered like a countdown. In the kitchen, Leonard's photo watches silently over the table, the same inscription below. Hand steady, heart steady. The words feel less like comfort now and more like a dare. Back at the diner, Finch and Jenna meet one more time, their lives already entangled beyond easy separation. Finch looks older than before, as if the act of telling the truth shaved months off his remaining time in uniform. "Once this runs, they'll come after both of us," he says. "No dramatics, just fact." Jenna shrugs, though her pulse races. "Then we make sure it's solid," she answers. "If they want to fight the facts, they can do it in daylight instead of shadows." Finch thinks about that, about sunlight and shadows, about what survives the glare. He knows some officers will call him a traitor, will say he turned on family. He also knows that Keller and Doyle built their careers on the assumption no one like him would ever push back. "Leonard Price deserved better," he says quietly. "So does Hale," Jenna nods. Somewhere between the coffee and the confession, this stopped being just a story. "Then let's give them both what we can," she replies. Finch wraps his hands around his mug, feeling the chipped ceramic beneath his fingers, the weight of almost 2 decades in internal affairs pressing on his shoulders. The hum of the diner, the clatter of plates, the hiss from the grill, all of it fades under the steady drum of his own heartbeat. He pictures retirement by the lake, the easy silence he'd planned. Then he imagines carrying this secret there with him. He sighs long and low. "All right," he says. "Let's blow this open." "I'll get you what I can," Finch had said. 3 days later, a thick manila envelope lands in Jenna Ruiz's mailbox. No return address, no note, just wait. Inside, photocopies of the Leonard Price investigation, the autopsy summary. Blunt force trauma to temporal region. Manner of death, undetermined, not consistent with accidental fall. The medical examiner had doubts, written in cautious language that still bled outrage. Someone overruled him. Someone needed this to be labeled tragic instead of criminal. Jenna flips to the witness statement, the original one before it was corrected. In tight blue ink, "I saw the officer hit the man. He swung something in his hand. The man dropped and didn't move. I screamed. The officer told me to go home." At the bottom of the closure form sits Captain Martin Doyle's signature, dated 3 days after the stop, before interviews were finished, before all evidence had even been logged into the system. The article publishes the next morning. Jenna's headline reads, the cop who killed before, and the chief who buried it. Within 24 hours, the story racks up 200,000 shares. Across town, Evelyn Price sees the piece on her tablet. She's 64, a widow for 10 long years. 10 years spent knowing something about Leonard's death was wrong. Friends told her to let it go. Her pastor preached forgiveness. Her lawyer insisted the file was closed for good. Nobody believed her. Not really. Now finally someone does. Evelyn dials the Tribune, asks for Jenna, leaves a message that's equal parts fury and relief. My name is Evelyn Price. Leonard was my husband. They told me he slipped, but I saw the bruises. I dressed his body. That wasn't a fall. I've waited 10 years for somebody to listen. I'm ready to talk. That same morning, Marcus Hale stares at the story on his laptop. He sits alone at his kitchen table, coffee going cold beside the screen. He reads Leonard's name. He reads the date. He reads the phrase, blunt force trauma. His fingers start to tremble. A decade ago, he stood at Leonard's funeral and tried to describe the kind of man his mentor was. Brilliant, decent, relentless in the OR. He told the mourners the world had dimmed when Leonard died. He never imagined the story itself was a fabrication. They killed you, Marcus whispers toward the framed photograph on his wall. And they walked away. That afternoon, he calls the number listed at the bottom of the article. Evelyn answers on the second ring. Her voice sounds steady, but underneath there's a fracture that has never healed, a wound waiting 10 years for acknowledgement. Mrs. Price, this is a Marcus Hale. I trained under Leonard. He taught me everything I know. Marcus's voice catches. I didn't know. I'm so sorry. Neither did I, Evelyn replies. Not for sure. Not until now. What can I do? Marcus asks. Help me make sure everyone else knows, she says. Help me make sure they don't bury another doctor. If you've ever watched an institution shield its own, you know how thick that armor is. Jenna drops a call-out at the end of her follow-up piece. Comment if you've seen similar patterns. Tell us what you've witnessed. The responses flood in, but the real story is still unfurling. Buried toward the back of the Price file, Jenna spots a line Harold Finch had underlined before copying. Near the bottom, radio traffic from incident deleted per department policy. Deleted. Not archived, not transferred. Deleted! Finch circles that sentence again in his personal copy. He knows exactly what it means. There once was a recording of that traffic stop, audio, that might have proved homicide. Someone made sure it vanished. Radio systems, Finch knows, are stubborn. Even when the supervisors hit delete, backups linger in servers, in redundant drives, in forgotten directories, ghost data. If the recording from Leonard's stop was scrubbed, maybe the file from the morning Rebecca's heart failed, still survives. Finch begins to dig through access logs and backup indices. The system does not like being questioned. Error messages multiply. Permissions vanish. Passwords mysteriously reset. It's like wrestling a living animal trained to bite its own handler. Week 3, Monday night. Jenna drives home from the Tribune, taillights tracing red lines through near-empty streets. Street lamps flicker in the March wind. Her dashboard clock reads 11:43 p.m. She is exhausted, running on caffeine and adrenaline, surviving on takeout and outrage. Since the article dropped, tips have poured into her inbox. Officers willing to whisper off the record. Residents with stories about Sergeant Keller. Every message needs confirmation. Every lid drags her deeper and closer to collapse. With attention comes danger. Jenna learned that the first time she tangled with a city official who thought reporters should know their place. As she approaches the intersection at 5th and Maple, the light flips red. She steps on the brake. Nothing. The pedal slides straight to the floor. No resistance, no slowing, only a sick weightlessness in her gut. Her car rockets through the intersection, barely missing a pickup, then slams into a concrete barrier at 40 miles an hour. The airbag explodes from the steering wheel. Glass erupts. Metal shrieks against stone. For a few endless seconds, the world is nothing but white fabric, pain, and the smell of burned chemicals. Then there is only ringing silence. When paramedics arrive, Jenna is conscious, bleeding from cuts on her face and arms. X-rays will show cracked ribs and a mild concussion. She will live. The official report the next morning lists brake line failure, cause undetermined, unfortunate, mechanical, nobody's fault. From her hospital bed, bruised and wired to monitors, Jenna dials Finch. Her words come carefully. Nurses might be listening. "They cut my brakes," she says flatly. "Somebody wants this buried." Finch says nothing at first. He doesn't ask if she's sure. Finally, "I figured they might push back," he murmurs. "Sounds like they just confirmed we're over the target." Jenna's voice sharpens. "This isn't done, Harold. Not even close." Finch exhales. "Yeah," he says. "I know. Neither am I." That same week, a different kind of strike lands. Wednesday afternoon, Lila Hale walks home from school. The air has finally softened. Spring leans into the neighborhood. Cherry blossoms smear pink along the sidewalks. She's thinking about algebra homework, about her father's case, about whether life will ever resemble normal again. At the mailbox, she flips it open. Among bills and pizza coupons sits a plain white envelope. No return address, no stamp. Just her name, printed neatly in black ink. Lila tears it open. Inside is a single sheet of paper, cheap copier stock. The message is typed in bold block letters. "Your father should stop digging. Curious families have accidents." Beneath the threat lies a glossy photograph. Lila herself walking into school that morning, backpack on, head down. The picture was taken from across the street by someone who waited, watched, and wanted her to know they'd been there. The envelope slips from her fingers. Her hands won't stop shaking. That night, Marcus makes a choice. "You're going to Atlanta," he tells Lila at the kitchen table. "You'll stay with Aunt Monique until this is over." "Dad, no, I'm not a little kid." "This isn't a debate," he cuts in, voice firm but eyes terrified. "I can't shield you if you're here." The next morning he drives her to the airport. The terminal hums with goodbyes, rolling suitcases, lives untouched by his disaster. At security, Lila wraps her arms around him and holds on longer than usual. He can feel the tremor in her shoulders. "Come back to me, okay?" she whispers. "You owe me a career day speech." "I will," he says. "I'm not done embarrassing you yet." She manages a laugh. Then she's gone, swallowed by the crowd. Marcus watches until she disappears completely, until he's just another man standing alone in a terminal, measuring the weight of everything he might lose. The counterattack comes from podiums, too. Chief Martin Doyle holds another press conference, this time flanked by union reps and stone-faced officers. He condemns the reporting as reckless and politically driven. His prepared remarks insist the allegations are baseless, that Sergeant Keller has his full confidence. The Price case, he claims, was thoroughly investigated and appropriately closed. There is no connection. The department's written statement declares, Between that incident and the unfortunate situation involving my wife's medical event, we stand with our officers, the statement reads, against smear campaigns meant to erode public trust in those who protect us. Behind Doyle, lined up in their dress blues, the rank-and-file stare straight ahead. But Officer Jason Rudd's gaze keeps drifting downward. When Doyle insists there's no connection, Jason's jaw tightens. His hands knot behind his back. He knows more than he has ever said. He has always known more. He is simply not ready to set himself on fire. Not yet. That evening, Marcus's phone buzzes with an unfamiliar number. He almost ignores it, then answers. The voice is controlled, measured. Dr. Hale, my name is Adrienne Cole. I'm an attorney. I've been following your case. Marcus sits in his dim kitchen. The house feels cavernous without Lila, quieter, colder, haunted. Why are you calling me, he asks. Because I want in, she replies. I'll represent you pro bono? Marcus's skepticism sharpens. Nobody works for free. What's your angle? There's a pause. When Adrienne speaks again, her voice carries an old scar. 8 years ago, I represented Evelyn Price. We tried to force accountability for Leonard's death. We lost. The deck was stacked, and we lacked proof, and I've regretted it ever since. Another breath. I don't plan on losing again. Among the hate mail piling in Marcus's box sits a different envelope, this one stamped from the district attorney's office. Inside, a plea deal printed on thick, unforgiving paper. Week 4, Thursday night. Marcus sits alone at the kitchen table. The lights are off. Only the street lamp outside spills a dull glow across the room. The refrigerator hums. The wall clock ticks. The plea agreement lies open in front of him. 18 pages of legalese distilled into one brutal bargain. Plead guilty. Accept 18 months in prison. Take a temporary suspension of his license instead of permanent revocation. The offer expires Friday. His pen rests above the signature line. 18 months. Lila will be 16 when he gets out. He could still be a surgeon. He could try to stitch his life back together. All it costs is a lie with his name on it. Admit to recklessness he never committed. Tell the world, officially, that he's the reason Rebecca's heart failed. The pen touches paper. Across town, in a house so expensive it might as well exist in another universe, Rebecca Doyle stands in her walk-in closet, staring at a box. The box has lived at the back of her closet for years, buried behind winter coats and shoes she never wears. She carries it to the bed, lifts the lid. Inside lies a leather-bound journal, its pages yellowed and warped. She wrote in it a decade ago, back when she still believed she might leave. She stopped writing when fear won. She hid the journal and eventually the memory of the woman who had dared to imagine an exit. Now she reads her own cramped handwriting. He decides what I wear, who I see, when I speak, one entry says. I asked to visit my sister. He said, no. End of discussion. I don't know if this is marriage or prison. If I ever try to leave, I don't think he'd let me. Rebecca closes the cover. Her hands tremble. 20 years of control. 20 years of silence masquerading as stability. 20 years of believing she had no alternatives. Her fingers drift to the scar on her chest, tracing the bump where the pacemaker sits. A machine pulses because 11 minutes were stolen from her. Dr. Hale put that device there. He dragged her back from the brink. Now her husband is using that act of mercy as a weapon to destroy the man who saved her. Rebecca turns on the TV. The news replays the parking lot video, the grainy clip that set all of this in motion. A black man in scrubs, hands cuffed. A white officer ignoring his pleas. Hospital doors gaping behind them. Rebecca watches and something shifts inside her. Something that has been frozen for 2 decades. The part of her that believed she was powerless begins to thaw. She picks up her phone and dials a number she asked a nurse for days ago. The line clicks. "Hello?" Marcus says. "Dr. Hale, this is Rebecca Doyle," she answers. "We need to talk." Silence stretches down the line. Then, "Mrs. Doyle," Marcus says slowly. "Not on the phone," she replies. "In person. There are things you don't know. Things that could change everything." In his kitchen, Marcus looks at the plea agreement, at the pen, at the photo of Leonard on the wall. 18 months guaranteed, or trust a woman whose heart he almost couldn't restart. What would you choose? Marcus sets the pen down. The pages of the plea remain unstained. "When can we meet?" he asks. Week 5. A coffee shop near the county line, far enough from downtown Meredith to feel almost anonymous. Rebecca sits in a corner table back to the wall, eyes fixed on the entrance. She wears a simple dress, no jewelry, barely any makeup. She looks smaller than she did in the hospital gown, but there's steel behind her fatigue now. Marcus slides into the seat across from her. The circles under his eyes are dark crescents. For a moment, neither speaks. The hiss of the espresso machine fills the space between them. Then Rebecca starts. "I know exactly who Gerald is," she says. "I've known for 20 years. I just couldn't—" She searches for the word. Finds it. "Escape." "Why now?" Marcus asks. "Because you tried to save me," she says. "You put your hands around my heart and refused to let it stop. And now he's twisting that to break you." She tells him about the morning of March 12th, about waking before dawn, about passing Gerald's study and hearing his voice low and commanding. He said, "Keep the area clear, slow them down," she recalls. "I didn't understand. I thought it was about security, paparazzi, something like that." Her hands knot around her coffee cup. "Now I know. He wanted me weak, dependent, too damaged to ever leave. He didn't want me dead, just permanently his." Marcus listens, the puzzle pieces snapping in together in his mind with sickening clarity. "Will you testify?" he asks. Rebecca studies him, the man who literally held her life between his fingers. "Yes," she says. "I'm done being his alibi." An hour later, Adrienne Cole joins them at the table, legal pad in hand. She walks Rebecca through the risks in cool clinical detail. If Rebecca goes on record against her husband, she could lose the house, the accounts, the lifestyle, everything familiar. "Gerald will come after you," Adrienne warns. "He'll weaponize every connection he has. He will scorch earth." Rebecca nods. "Everything I have is already his," she says quietly. "That's the problem. It's always been the problem." She signs a preliminary statement that afternoon. The next day, Evelyn Price meets Rebecca at Adrienne's office. 2 women, bound by different wounds to the same corrupt machine. One lost a husband, the other nearly lost her life, both harmed by the chief's need for control. Evelyn reaches across the conference table, takes Rebecca's hand. "My Leonard died because of that officer," she says. "Your husband protected him, made sure nobody paid." "I know," Rebecca answers, "and I'm going to help make sure someone finally does." They have courage and stories, but they still need proof, something undeniable. Finch has been hunting for the missing link. The original Price recording is gone, purged years ago. But technology changed. New backup systems came online after that. Digital shadows remain even when originals disappear. Finch calls Adrienne. I found something, he says. March 12th, 7:15 a.m. Conversation between the chief and Keller. What's on it? She asks. Enough, Finch replies. Enough to knock the legs out from under all of this. Marcus reps the plea agreement in half, then into quarters. Paper flutters to the floor like discarded skin. He's done negotiating away his innocence. He's no longer simply a defendant. He's about to become a pivot point. Week 6. Internal Affairs Evidence Room. Lieutenant Harold Finch sits alone with a department laptop and a pair of foam-padded headphones. The room is windowless, lined with filing cabinets and dust. On the screen, a file name blinks. Radio backup 03120715. He double-clicks. The audio crackles, then clears. 2 male voices. 2 men who've worked together for more than a decade. The recording runs 43 seconds. That's all it takes to rewrite what everyone thought they knew about March 12th. Chief Doyle's voice comes first. Keller, I want you near St. Clement today. Rebecca's got an appointment. What am I watching for? Keller asks. A pause. When Doyle speaks again, the warmth is gone. Keep the area clear, he says. Anyone who doesn't look like they belong, slow them down. You understand? Copy that, Keller replies. The recording ends. Finch removes the headphones. His hands are steady. His heart feels like it's trying to punch through his ribs. Slow them down. 3 words spoken. 5 hours before Rebecca's code. 5 hours before Keller shackled a surgeon instead of letting him pass. 5 hours before 52 seconds of flatline nearly rewrote her entire future. This isn't just a bad call in the moment. It's premeditation, conspiracy, interference with medical care. Finch burns copies, stores them in multiple places, then calls Adrian. I've got your smoking gun, he says. The chief's voice, the order, the whole rotten thing. Adrian gathers the core team in her conference room. Marcus, Rebecca, Evelyn. Jenna, pale but upright, still healing from the crash and refusing to slow down. Finch sets a small speaker on the table and hits play. The room goes utterly still. When the clip ends, Rebecca speaks first. He didn't want me healed quickly, she says. He wanted me dependent. Adrian nods. The motive is control. Maybe money, maybe politics. But above all, control, she says. And now we can prove it. Finch slides another folder across the table. There's more, he says. Inside is an overtime audit he's quietly compiled. Over the last 2 years, Sergeant Keller logged 340 hours of overtime with no clear assignment attached. $28,000 in extra pay. Every single request bears Chief Doyle's signature. Keller wasn't just a street cop. He was on retainer, an unofficial fixer, a tool the chief could activate whenever someone needed to be scared, silenced, or conveniently removed. The pattern is undeniable now. Leonard Price in 2016. The engineered delay that nearly killed Rebecca, probably others. Cases that never made the news, complaints that died in filing cabinets, people who decided no one would believe them. Adrian files an emergency motion with the state. A grand jury hearing is fast-tracked. Subpoenas go out to Doyle, Keller, Officer Jason Rudd. District Attorney Robert Laird announces he's recusing himself. An outside special prosecutor is appointed, someone with no ties to Meredith. The charges against Marcus aren't withdrawn, not yet. But the air around his case has changed. He feels it in the way reporters call now, in the way hospital administrators stop sounding quite so certain. He's no longer the department's villain of choice. He's their problem witness. His phone rings on a gray Tuesday. Adrienne's voice is tight with purpose. "The grand jury wants you," she says. "Day 58. You're going to tell them everything under oath." Marcus looks at Leonard's frame photo. "I'm ready," he says. "There's one more piece," Adrienne adds. "Rebecca has agreed to testify in person. She's going to look her husband in the eye and tell that room exactly what he did." Marcus closes his eyes. 8 years of unasked questions about Leonard. Weeks of fear for Lila. "Will she be safe?" he asks. Adrienne hesitates. "I can't promise that," she admits. "But she says she'd rather be free than safe." Day 58 arrives. Meredith County Courthouse. The gallery is packed, every bench filled. TV vans crowd the street outside. Inside, the air smells like old varnish and nerves. Marcus takes the stand first. He wears a navy suit that feels like armor and a noose at the same time. His hands rest calmly on his knees. Only his jaw muscles betray tension. 15 years in surgery have taught him how to speak steadily, while everything around him feels like it's burning. He starts at the beginning. The code blue. The decision to cut across the lot. Keller's shout. The demands for ID. "I told him I was a surgeon," Marcus testifies. "I showed him my badge. He said the picture didn't look like me. He ignored everything else." "What happened next?" the special prosecutor asks. "He put me in handcuffs," Marcus says. 4 minutes later, he let me go. By then, 11 minutes had passed since the code was called. The prosecutor plays the body camera footage. The courtroom watches the same video the country has argued over for weeks. Only now, the silence feels heavier. Next, Keller takes the stand. His lawyer reads a statement about split-second decisions and officer safety. Then Keller invokes the fifth. No questions answered. Murmurs ripple through the gallery. The judge bangs the gavel. Order is restored, barely. Then an unexpected witness asks to speak. Officer Jason Rudd, hands trembling as he walks to the stand. Jason has spent 8 weeks bargaining with his conscience in the dark. Today, conscience wins. On March 12th, the chief called us into his office, he says. "What did he tell you?" the prosecutor asks. "He said his wife had an appointment at St. Clement. He wanted us nearby to keep things controlled." "Did he say what kind of things?" Jason swallows, eyes flicking to Doyle in the front row. "He said to watch for anyone who didn't look like they belonged." "Did you understand what that meant?" "Yes, ma'am," Jason says, voice cracking. "He meant black folks. He meant slow them down. Make sure nobody reached her too fast. The gallery erupts." The judge slams the gavel, threatening to clear the courtroom. On the record, the department's official memo is read aloud. Sergeant Keller acted within established protocols. But no protocol explains targeting people who don't look like they belong. No training manual justifies delaying treatment in the middle of a cardiac emergency. Rebecca takes the stand last. She walks slowly but upright, wearing a simple blouse that doesn't quite hide the line of her scar. She never glances at Martin Doyle. She doesn't need to. "Mrs. Doyle, what can you tell us about your marriage?" the prosecutor asks. Rebecca's voice is steady, the way voices sometimes are when fear has burned away. "My husband controlled every part of my life," she says. "Where I went, who I saw, what I believed was possible. On the morning of March 12th, I heard him on the phone," she continues. "He said, 'Slow them down.' At the time, I didn't understand. Now I do. He wanted me dependent. He wanted me too fragile to ever leave him." She pauses. "Dr. Hale tried to save me. My husband tried to make sure he couldn't." She turns then, looking directly at Doyle for the first time. "You taught me how to survive you," she says. "Now I'm using it against you." The special prosecutor moves quickly. An arrest warrant is signed right there in the courthouse. Charges: conspiracy, obstruction of medical care, civil rights violations, reckless endangerment. A bailiff steps toward the defense table, handcuffs close around the same wrists that once pinned medals to uniforms. "Rebecca," Doyle says, voice breaking as reality slams into him. "How could you do this?" She meets his gaze without flinching. "You trained me for 20 years, she answers. "You shouldn't be surprised I finally learned." Week 10. The charges against Marcus are dismissed with prejudice. The special prosecutor's statement is blunt. Dr. Hale is not only innocent, he is a victim of a coordinated effort to silence him and protect powerful officials. Doyle sits in county lockup awaiting trial on 9 counts. A judge denies bail. Keller pleads guilty to federal civil rights violations and receives 8 years in prison. The Leonard Price case is formally reopened. After a decade of waiting, Evelyn will get real answers. Rebecca files for divorce. She packs a single suitcase and moves into her sister's spare bedroom, the visit Gerald blocked for 15 years. She is bruised, wired to a pacemaker, emotionally scorched. But for the first time since her 20s, she is not afraid of life without him. She is more frightened of life with him. Week 12, St. Clement Regional Medical Center unveils a new operating suite. A bronze plaque gleams beside the door, freshly drilled into the wall. It reads, "The Leonard Price Memorial Operating Suite. Hand steady, heart steady." Marcus stands before it, throat tight. Evelyn stands beside him, her fingers resting lightly on the metal. In the small crowd gathered in the hallway, Rebecca watches quietly, one hand pressed over the scar on her chest like a promise. The automatic doors swoosh open and Lila bursts through, sprinting down the hall. She slams into her father, wrapping him in a hug that nearly knocks him over. "You came back," she says into his shoulder. "I told you I would," Marcus answers. "I keep my promises, remember?" Her laughter, muffled by his shirt, sounds like a life he thought might be gone forever. That afternoon, Marcus scrubs in for his first surgery since everything started. An emergency cardiac repair on a young man who never expected his chest to be open. He picks up a scalpel. In the bright, humming quiet of the OR, his hands are rock steady. 52 seconds. That's how long Rebecca's heart went silent. Long enough to steal memories, to carve scars into muscle and marriage. But the heart kicked again. So did the town. Protests didn't magically fix anything. Lawsuits didn't erase trauma. A badge still carries power, but now, in Meredith, it also carries new scrutiny. Policies change. Cameras multiply. And in departmental training rooms, instructors repeat a lesson learned the hardest possible way. The ER door belongs to medicine, not ego. A badge is supposed to be a responsibility, not a shield. Keller treated his like armor. Doyle treated his like a crown. Both discovered that, even in a town like Meredith, there's a limit to how long you can rewrite reality before it pushes back. The most dangerous thing they learned too late isn't a protest sign or a viral video. It's an ordinary person who decides to speak when they were expected to stay quiet and refuses to sit back down. For Jenna, the scars from the crash fade slowly. She still startles at screeching brakes. She still double-checks her car before driving. But the story stands. Her reporting wins, awards she doesn't particularly care about, and threats that no longer surprise her. Finch retires 6 months later. Pension intact, reputation divided, hero to some, traitor to others. He spends mornings at his lake cabin, coffee in hand, knowing he finally filed a report that didn't get buried. Adrienne's phone doesn't stop ringing. Other families, other cities, other patterns. She can't take every case, but she listens to all of them. Some she passes on to younger lawyers she's training. The work is exhausting and endless. It is also the only kind she's interested in anymore. Evelyn sits with Leonard's plaque at least once a month, hand resting on the cool metal, telling him about the patients walking through the door bearing his name. Rebecca relearns how to live in a body that feels both mechanical and miraculous. Some days, every beep of her pacemaker reminds her of what was taken. Other days, it feels like proof that she got away. Therapy is hard. Court is harder. Freedom is hardest of all because it comes with choices she never learned how to make. She starts small, choosing her own clothes, her own friends, her own schedule. They're tiny rebellions that add up to a new life. Lila goes back to school and slowly, classmates stop pointing when she walks down the hall. Teachers still glance at her with that mixture of pity and curiosity reserved for kids whose families make the news. She learns to breathe through it. She joins the debate team. She starts talking about policy and accountability in front of microphones, voice steady like her father's in the OR. She isn't sure yet who she'll become, only that silence won't be part of it. Marcus keeps operating. Hearts rupture, valves fail, arteries clog. He works beside nurses who saw him dragged away in cuffs and administrators who once signed suspension papers with shaking hands. Some people apologize directly, some don't. The OR doesn't care either way. The heart on the table doesn't care. All it asks is for steady hands and a mind clear enough to make decisions measured in seconds and millimeters, not in fear of headlines or hostile chiefs. On quiet evenings when Lila is asleep and the house finally feels like home again, Marcus stands in front of Leonard's photograph. "We got him," he says sometimes, meaning Keller, meaning Doyle, meaning the faceless machine that kept them safe for so long. Other times he just stands there, saying nothing, letting the silence stretch between student and teacher. The promise etched into the plaque outside his OR is the same one he renews here. Hand steady, heart steady. Not every town gets this kind of reckoning. Most places swallow their scandals, smooth them over with press releases, move on. Meredith doesn't get that luxury anymore. Too many cameras, too many witnesses, too many people who decided their fear wasn't worth more than the truth. The system bends, creaks, resists. It does not crumble. That's the frustrating part about reform. It's always slower than the harm that made it necessary. But slow is still better than silent. If you stayed with this story, you know it isn't really about one surgeon, one chief, one botched traffic stop, or one sabotaged code blue. It's about how close we let power stand between vulnerable people and the help they need. It's about what happens when we decide uniforms automatically mean truth. And it's about the rare moments when that assumption cracks and the world has to reconsider whose testimony deserves to be believed first. Maybe you've seen smaller versions of this in your own life. A complaint brushed aside, a pattern everyone privately acknowledges, but nobody challenges. Maybe you've been the person told to keep your head down, to be grateful, to not make trouble. Stories like Marcus's aren't supposed to end with vindication. They're supposed to end quietly, in ruined careers and closed files. The only reason this one didn't is because enough people refused to nod along. Jenna's article ends with a line she almost deletes before filing, worried it sounds too bold. Her editor leaves it in. "A badge is not immunity," she writes. "It's a promise to step aside when someone else can save a life better than you can." It gets quoted, misquoted, turned into hashtags and protest signs. People argue about whether it's fair. The people most offended by it are, predictably, the ones least likely to ever need an emergency surgeon. The rest of us don't get that guarantee. We get human beings in crisis, systems that sometimes help and sometimes hurt, and a choice about whether to pretend we don't see the difference. Marcus walks into an OR, snaps on gloves, and does what he's always done. Tries to keep somebody's world from shattering. He can't control what cops do in parking lots, but he can control what happens when a heart is literally in his hands. If this story sticks with you, don't let it end when the credits roll. Tell someone about it, share it, argue with it. Remember that the truth doesn't wait for permission slips from people in power. It shows up in shaky cell phone footage, in forgotten reports, in voices that refuse to be quiet. Sometimes the most powerful witness is the one you expected to stay silent, and the moment they finally decide not to. For those of us in our late 60s and 70s, Marcus's story is a painful reminder that racism and misuse of power didn't disappear after the marches and speeches. A black man can save lives for decades and still be treated like a suspect. Lesson 2. We also see how courage multiplies. An honest cop, a grieving widow, a frightened wife, and a stubborn reporter choose to speak up, and together they crack the armor around a powerful police chief. Lesson 3. Change comes slowly. The way a weak heart heals after surgery. Policies shift, plaques go up, but scars remain. Our generation knows better than most that justice is a lifelong fight, and every voice, even a shaking one, still matters. Friends, after walking through Marcus's journey, the cuffs in the parking lot, the chief's betrayal, and the courage of everyday people who finally spoke up, how does it touch your own memories and beliefs? Have you ever seen a moment when someone in power blocked help? Or when an ordinary neighbor found the strength to say, "Enough"? I'd love to hear your stories and reflections in the comments. Please like this video, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and share it with someone you care about so we can keep learning and standing up together.